Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Everyone is here tonight except for Ms. Sweatland, who is absent. If everyone can check your cell phones. Oh, and Mr. Pollack is running late, I understand. Yes, thank you. If everyone check your cell phones to make sure they're turned off. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the November 28th, 2017 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Someone make a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Mr. Lopez, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Minton, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the work session minutes from the January 23rd, 2018 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the workshop meeting minutes.
Mr. Lopez, is there a second? Mr. Wright? Okay, I have one correction for that one. When you look down the minutes, the second portion that says quasi-judicial and legislative proceedings by the city attorney, the last line there that says substantial confidence evidence, it should be substantial competent evidence. Are there any other questions or comments, corrections? So I guess we need to...
I'll make the amendment. What's the amendment to the minutes for my
Okay.
motion?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So now we have the motion to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item that's not on our agenda, which I'm assuming was just inadvertently left off, is election of officers. Since this is our first meeting of the year, we need to do that for chairman and vice chair. Is there, I'll take nominations for chair.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wright?
nominate Ms. Moore for chair.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so I remain chair. And now we'll accept nominations for vice chair.
Sure.
Mr. Wright?
I nominate Mr. Lopez for vice chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Vice chair, nominate you too.
Seeing none, we'll vote for Darrell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore.
Got a lobby up top. You're a elector. You got no one to start lobbying.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comments. This is the time for anyone in the public to speak to the board regarding any item on tonight's agenda or any other matter. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. The next item on the agenda is a deviation request for 709 Palm Drive. Do we have the applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Okay, if you would come up to the podium, please. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Derek Brigman. I live at 709 Palm Drive in Oviedo.
And then if you'll tell us about your project and why you think we should approve it.
We currently have had, prior to the storm, a 4-foot fence, and is basically destroyed. We have a few lingering sections. We back up to one of the entrances for Sweetwater Park, and it gets quite a bit of traffic, and we have an issue with people parking between the road and our fence in our backyard and going to the park, or parking there and honking their horn and waiting for people to come through the entrance to pick them up or whatever the case may be, and a lot of foot traffic as well. So we want to put a privacy fence, but we don't want to give up 25 feet of our yard, which is the current statute. So that is why we filed for this deviation request, just to have a 6-foot fence. We're in the backyard, it's kind of, our getaway, and it's just constant traffic. There's no privacy back there. There's no family time. We're completely open and exposed to everybody, and, that was the main reason, is privacy and somewhat safety concerns.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr. Wright?
I mean, I think according to code, you can put up a 4-foot fence, replace the 4-foot fence and stay
Right.
2 feet. What's your reasoning to just not go back to the 4-foot and ask for the deviation?
Like I said, kind of privacy and somewhat security. There's if you ever just go sit back there for an hour, you would see it's a lot of traffic. So that was kind of the reason. We have a 4-year-old daughter. We have our 10-year-old nephew. Their trampoline and forts and stuff back there, and it would just give us peace of mind to be able to sit back there and not just be completely exposed and stared at and all that kind of stuff. So it's almost like how the park entrance leads to our backyard. It's almost like we're an extension of the park at this point. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have any more questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cashland?
The plan shows a double gate in the back.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't show what size that is. It's a small double gate, full-size double gate, vehicle size.
10 foot. 10.
It's vehicle size.
So yeah, currently there is a gate there as part of the old fence, and that's a 10 foot as well. Yeah, so we just wanted to go back to the same size gate.
That's all.
Any other questions, the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
May we hear from staff?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chairman, board members. This is a request for the LPA to approve a 2-foot high deviation to the maximum 4-foot fence height for fence accessory structures, representing a 50% deviation to the maximum 4-foot high fence requirement in Section 4.14 to allow the 6-foot high wooden fence within 2 feet of their west, which is also their rear property line, as well as the first 25 feet of their south property line, because that is also the same area that the 25-foot front setback would be. 6 foot would be allowed through the remainder of their southern border should they choose. The property is located on Palm Drive, but it fronts Palm Drive and it also fronts North Division Street. So it is somewhat of a special circumstance because they have 2 frontages. The staff has reviewed their deviation request pursuant to Section 2.7 of the Land Development Code and found that there are special circumstances that exist with their lot given their double frontages, their proximity to the entrance to the park, and for safety and unwanted encroachment onto their private property. What they're requesting is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and adjacent uses. They're mitigating by planting a large canopy tree and some shrubbery to help soften the look of the fence. And there are no environmental impacts, and this 50% deviation to give them the 6-foot fence, which is standard for a residential home, is the minimum necessary for them to meet their needs. So with that, staff is recommending approval of this development order, specifically the 2-foot high deviation to the maximum 4-foot to allow them to construct a 6-foot high wood fence within 2 feet of their rear west property line and the first 25 feet of their southern property line.
Okay, are there any questions of staff?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wright?
I did have a question about the landscaping part. Well, another question after that, too. You're asking them to do the mitigation for the shrubbery and large tree, but is that on the inside of the fence? It says rear, but is that on the outside, the street side, the Division Street side, or is that on the...
It'll be on inside their side, so when it overgrows, it'll soften the hard lines of the fence.
Okay. I understood the tree part of that, obviously, the large tree, but I just didn't understand how the shrubbery, unless it's going to grow 7 foot, it's not going to really have any mitigated techniques for the, why we're asking them to do that. So, I mean, other than,
Do we?
I mean, if we're putting it on the division side, I could understand to soften the impact, but
Yeah, we have no problem.
I'm sorry, you need to come up to the microphone for the record.
I guess I could just stay here.
it's really.
Yeah, we have no problem doing
Yeah, and I'm sure you don't have a problem because it
Right.
would cost you less money. I was really just trying to get from staff why we were asking them to do, if there was a reason why we would ask them to do the mitigative on the inside of the fence.
My thought on it was that so they could actually maintain the trees and the shrubs, the
Yeah.
pruning and whatnot, instead of having to go around. And then within that area, it's 2 feet of the property line, so they only have 2 feet. They would be
Understood.
working
Yeah,
inside the
absolutely
city's
understood.
right-of-way.
Yeah, they can push the shrubbery along the 2 feet of setback.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with it, because, like I said, it's just, the technique for mitigative techniques is to soften the impact, but if we do it on the inside of the fence, it really doesn't do, the tree helps. The second tree instead of the shrubs might help. I'm just throwing ideas out here, but, that's, I thought that was the purpose of our mitigative techniques, was to soften the impact to the outside people, of the fence, so. All right, I'll come back to that. Thank you. The second question was about the gate. Because the gate is 10 foot wide, it's really more for it's not pedestrian use, it's probably more for a vehicle or, bringing something in. Are we aware of any restrictions? Because it does have dual frontages, sometimes there is a restriction that they can't have access to the Division Street side, they have to go off on the Palm Street side. So I guess my question is, are we aware of any restrictions that would prohibit the use of, bringing a vehicle in off of Division Street to the back?
From my understanding, well, we presented that question to Public Works, and they didn't identify any issues. They would have to pull a right-of-way type 1 permit in order to put a driveway apron at that area. When I spoke with Mrs. Brigman early today, it's for purposes of bringing in their boat, because along the side of their home now are 2 large oak trees, and they can't get to their rear yard with their boat through the front.
So, and that's kind of, thank you for clarifying that, but I guess what I'm wondering is because they don't have to put a driveway apron in, if there is traffic back and forth off the curb and through the grass area there, I mean, who's going to maintain that if it gets rutted or people are using that as a regular basis for exit and entry off of Division Street? Because if the fence is up, no offense, I don't expect you to be out there mowing Division Street, the frontage, if it's, necessary. So my concern is that we were providing an access without really having an access point. So I'm not in favor of approving you with the gate on there for that reason. I think if the gate's necessary and they need access, then they should go through a permit process to access a driveway. Again, as long as it's within the confines of the city to be able to allow them Division Street access. So.
This request is for the fence. I saw the gate as part of a separate building permit, so we can address the gate through the building permit.
Okay.
So that's also in-house. So if the board wishes for them to have a smaller gate for purpose of pedestrians, then that's something that we can comment on as part of the building permit that they also have in-house with the city.
Can I just get clarification, something that you said? You mentioned you wouldn't expect us to maintain the division.
No, I have no expectations that you would maintain anything behind the fence on the Division Street side. But
Okay.
my concern is that when we provide a 10-foot wide gate, which is really for the purposes of bringing in
Right.
a camper or a boat or a truck or anything, that that road has got a curb, it's got a grass parkway that the city maintains. That traffic over and above that will eventually rut that out. It'll require maintenance, and at that point, you wouldn't be expected to do that, the city would be. So
Right.
normally what that would be provided is if you wanted a rear entrance like that, we would require, at least through the city, a permit that would require a driveway access where at least it would be protected, where we're not constantly having to go and send the maintenance crews out there to fix, something that, well, we know we live in Florida, we know that, you run up on the medians and you're going to rut the grass in wet seasons and stuff like that. So I'm not putting anything in there for you to maintain anything at this point.
Okay.
I just have a concern that we're going to have a maintenance problem by providing you a access point to your rear property.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Pollak?
First, let me apologize to everybody here for being late. I respect all of your time, and my apologies. You brought up a couple questions that I just want clarification on. The request is to include that 10-foot gate in the fence, correct? Is that what we're talking about here? In the back, on Division Street?
Well, we saw actually, we totally didn't even see the gate until Mr. Gashin brought it out. It was in their building permit for the fence, and then we included on the survey, but the deviation request is just for the fence.
So I guess my question is, so if the gate is there now, and then the deviation is to raise the height of the fence, or that he wants to put there, the fact that the gate is standing there now, does that give any sort of...
This is the gate.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the gate.
Yeah.
Is there any... Is that grandfathered in, so to speak, because it was already an existing structure? Now, because he's putting a fence up, does he have to now reapply to redo the gate that's already there? And I guess that's the question that I'm thinking about now, is that he's coming in for a deviation on the fence that's not there.
Existing.
Was
It's-
it ever permitted?
I don't know, because it came with the house when they bought the house.
That doesn't,
I was just told it came with the house when they bought it, but that really doesn't mean anything. If it was permitted, then there's a grandfathering issue. If it wasn't permitted, then it's still not permitted.
Right, but...
Even if it's there, it doesn't mean to be used. Because my guess is there'd be a curb cut permit for the rear.
Well, and that's a good point, because what staff reviewed was not the gate.
Right.
So staff reviewed the deviation for the fence. Actually, I think when our staff was doing the attachments for the presentation tonight, they checked the building permit, and they saw that there was a fence. So actually, I was caught by surprise when Mr. Gashlin, pointed out the gate, and that was a good point. And I said, well, we have to discuss tonight, because we did not review the second access. And I said at that point, Public Works have to check that, because for a driveway, we require a special permit for a driveway. And we were concerned of line of sight, because now we're increasing the fence. So we called Public Works. Public Works did not show any major issue with the line of sight. But I think what I would propose is that we do not approve the gate, because the gate is part of the building permit. We approve the height of the fence, because that's what staff reviewed, and we'll check what are the implications for having, a secondary access with the building permit. And if that is not allowed, then we'll check if the original fence was permitted, so if they would be a non-conforming situation, or if they are grandfathered by any way for a legal. So it has to be a legal non-conformity. So they have to be, an existing and permitted, fence.
Just to allay your concerns, I think you might have some concerns. You could, if you decide to grant the deviation, you could grant it with the condition that you're not approving any gate unless all required permits are obtained from the city as necessary, which my guess, besides the building permit for the fence, which hasn't been issued yet, right?
Correct.
No.
It won't be.
It's subject to...
It won't be issued like that with the gate if there's not a permit to have access back there. True? It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it would not be.
Rhetorical.
So the building,
That was semi-rhetorical. But
the-
there won't be, the fence permit will not be issued the way it's applied for now if there's not legal access from the rear. It'll only be permitted that way if there is access. And somebody's got to find a permit for that, because
Mr. Lopez?
I have a quick question. You're not the original owner, correct?
Right.
Now, have you been using the back as an entrance since you moved in?
Just for the boat, probably for the last couple of weeks, yeah.
Has there been is there kind of a route in there when you bought the house, or nothing, right?
The previous owner said he would use it during so we had some issues when we first moved in back there. They're doing drainage right now from Palm to Division. So it was all clogged up. All the water was going out into the backyard. So we brought in 16 loads of dirt and had it, graded and all that kind of stuff. And then now they're fixing the drainage. So he wasn't able during the rainy season to park back there or drive back there, but he said when it was dry enough that he did used to use it for his vehicles.
And you would come in through the back.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, if I may follow up on
Mr.
the line of
Pollack.
questioning. So the question I have for the city was, so if we're not sure right now if the 10-foot gate that's part of the plan, I understand we're asking for a deviation from 4 feet to 6 feet, but I understand that that deviation will include a 6-foot, 10-foot wide gate at the same 6-foot height.
No.
Am I wrong?
No.
So right now, there's no request for that gate? It's supposed to be just empty right now?
It's not part of the memo, it was not part of the request, it was not part of our review.
It's not part of the development order either.
But you could grant the deviation as applied for, and the fence permit ultimately could be denied because of the gate.
And that's exactly where I'm getting to, is that were we to approve a deviation, it may be moot if we still haven't addressed the issue of the gate that may or may not be there, depending on whether or not there's been a permit in the past. Am I understanding that correctly?
But a gate would not require deviation from the board. It's just the height of the fence. So the gate, we will have to check if it complies with, with the city code, if Public Works is okay, if they would have another, driveway access. So we would have, this would be the regular.
Unless that gate was grandfathered in because it was a permit previously pulled.
Well, and that's would be part of our review. We would not need the board for that.
But if we're putting in a wood fence, we'd arguably most likely be putting a wood gate as well, right? And if we were going to put in a wood gate, I'm assuming that even if the deviation wasn't an issue, the wood gate would still be whatever the height of the fence is. Am I correct?
Yes, you're
Okay.
approving the height of the fence, the whole fence. The fence would include the gate, if a gate is permissible.
Right, so are you asking us to approve a deviation from 4 feet to 6 feet for a fence not including the gate, or for the
At this
fence?
point, yes, not including the gate. I mean, if a gate is
Well,
permissible, we would check the gate.
The application is for a deviation from 4 to 6 for a fence, period. How it ends up being permitted, that's another question, which you all didn't have to worry about.
So the gate is not part of what we are actually
Nope.
would
That's a
approve
bur-
or
that's
not.
a building
approve tonight.
permitted.
Okay, so for the gate is a non-issue.
Non-issue for you.
We just want to know if we can
Maybe
do
an
4
issue.
feet or 6 feet and call it a day, right? We
Excuse
just
me?
want to know between 4 feet and 6
That's
feet,
right.
yes or no?
4 to 6, yes.
The gate is not our problem. Okay, and that was my question. Last question about the softening of the fence. It was mentioned that the shrubs would either be on the inside or the outside. After the questioning, what was the conclusion of that then? The shrubs would be on the inside or the outside?
Would be in the outside, in the right-of-way side.
In the right-of-way
Actually,
side.
on their property, but outside of the fence, so
On the
that
right.
it can soften the visual of the fence.
Okay, and maintenance responsibilities would fall on homeowner on that right-of-way? on the
Because
outside?
it's not in the right-of-way, it's still within their 2
But
feet.
got it, in setback. That's all I needed. Thank you so much for clarifying all that. Thank you.
Teresa, before you sit down, this talks about shrubbery along the back fence. I don't see anything clarifying how much shrubbery. Are we talking 2 pieces? Are we talking 10 pieces? How far apart? How
I think
is that
it's
determined?
along, right, the fence?
When this started, there was more shrubbery, so they were just going to fill in the missing pockets. But because of the city's drainage work, they've had to remove more shrubbery and more trees. So they had agreed to put in as much as they could to just soften what was already there. But the original language, the city staff's drainage work occurred after we prepared this. So their original intent was to just put in the shrubberies where there were pockets of shrubberies, where there was gaps in the existing shrubbery.
On the inside or the outside of the fence?
The outside of the fence.
Okay. So is any of that shrubbery having to be taken out so that the fence can be installed?
No, there's no, the shrubbery, a lot of the shrubbery and the trees that were there now have already been removed by Public Works. So the original intent was, before Public Works went out there and started taking out the landscaping, their intent was to put in shrubs where there were gaps in existing shrubbery.
And because Public Works removed it for the drainage, is Public Works putting anything back? Okay.
It's in their utility easement, they do not have to.
Okay. And so how do we put it in the order as far as describing the shrubbery or something about it so that there's some clarification as to whether or not, because the way it is, all they have to do is put in 1 or 2 pieces. There's nothing that says it has to be along the whole rear fence, or it has to be every 5 feet, or there has to be 20 of them, or whatever?
We don't have a,
Yeah, they really don't know that right now. What you could do, Madam Chair, is say shrubbery shall be installed as approved by staff, and if there's any dispute between the applicant and staff with regard to that, it comes back to you.
Okay.
If you like that.
It's an easier way to quantify it without quantifying it.
Right.
Right, because right now staff can't.
Yeah, we can't quantify it.
So placement of shrubbery as approved by staff?
And if there's a dispute between the applicant and staff, then it comes back to you all for resolution.
Yes. Are there any other questions of staff or the applicant? Okay. This is not a public comment item, so what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lopez?
make a motion to approve the deviation request for 709 Palm Drive with this regarding to the shrubs that they would be assessed by staff, and if there's a conflict between staff and the homeowner, they come back to the board, and that the shrubs will be placed on the outside of the fence.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Wright, thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Is there any need to add to this motion that this is not approval of the gate?
No,
We're not
the
approving
gate's
gate
not in.
anyway. We're not discussing the gate.
Yeah.
We've made staff aware of what their concerns were, and they will take it from there.
Okay. Is there any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You'll need to meet with staff again to work out the details and get the permits. Good luck with your project.
Thank you guys so much.
Good luck.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, public hearings. We don't have any discussion items listed. Do any of the board members have anything we need to discuss?
I have a quick question.
Mr. Pollock?
We discussed something about something that had to do with the traffic or something. Remember a couple of weeks ago before we had our last meeting? Do you recall what that was or what we were planning on
We had
discussing?
asked for a, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
since I asked for it, so I,
It's your bid.
It is your bid.
we had asked to have a future work session set up so that we could have the city's traffic engineers come in and give us a little bit more of a comprehensive update on methodologies they use to determine when a project has no impact. Because my concern was that everything we get in, they basically already have vested rights, and that, we approve projects based on the fact that they say that there has no, it doesn't add any additional trips that are already programmed in. Obviously, we know that we live here. So I'm really looking for some insight myself and hopefully everybody else.
I am.
To
I'm with you.
to why this, going forward, how they make these decisions.
Yeah, but I agree. I think there's a growing pulse in the community that I'm starting to hear everywhere I go about the concerns about traffic. And I just
It's gotten
think,
worse.
What's that?
It's gotten worse.
Yeah, and I think it would be good of us to have that work session and do our part to see if we can figure out, or at least get some.
My understanding is staff's working on getting that set
Yeah,
up.
awesome. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, our future meeting dates are March 6th and...
Madam Chair?
Mr. Wright?
I apologize. I don't want to extend this any further. I will tell you that from recent experience in our own neighborhood, fencing seems to become a critical issue as of late. For the first time in my life, I actually had to contact code enforcement because of the way fences are being constructed in our neighborhood.
The lack thereof.
No, the example I will give you is that we have a corner lot, and the city's requirement is that you can only go half the distance to the right-of-way, and you have to start at the rear of the house, can't be beyond. That's a corner lot designation, and this person on Twin Rivers Boulevard actually built the fence 2 feet from the sidewalk all the way to the front of his house. So you basically drive down the road, and there's a backyard kind of backwards to where the lot is. And I'm seeing a lot of fences being constructed to the fronts of the houses and stuff like that. So this one kind of caught my eyes a little bit just because it started to be a red flag for me. So I don't know that there's anything I can do about it at this point, but, bring it up and maybe I'll have a future discussion with staff, on.
What's your HOA?
Yeah, my HOA is worthless, so.
My
No,
understanding from fence contractors is they're just now starting to get a lot of the wooden fence in after the hurricane, because everybody in so many states needed fence. So we'll probably start to see more of these permits, or deviations rather, come before us.
I agree. Even the vinyl, they're starting to come back into
Yeah.
because they were out of vinyl.
Okay, is there anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. The future meeting dates, March 6th, and then the March 20th meeting isn't. It's canceled. I think that's spring break for kids around
I
here.
think it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we know if we have a March 6th meeting?
I think we have at least one item.
Okay. If there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. All of us. At one time.
We all agree.
Okay, is there a second?
We all second as well.
Sure, we all second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.